Iran karapte, habu junko, sekoro kurehe an. こんにちは。カリフォルニア大学日本研究センター長の羽生純子です。Welcome to part 3 of our CJS JSPS special event, Language, Indigenous Knowledge, and Cultural Landscapes of the Ainu, Perspectives from Nibutani, Hokkaido. I'm Junko Habu, Professor of Anthropology and the Chair of the Center for Japanese Studies, or CJS. We are co-hosting this event with the San Francisco office of the Japan Society for the Promotion of Science, or JSPS, together with the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature in Kyoto, as well as with several campus units, including the Native American Study Student Development, the Archaeological Research Facility, the Department of Anthropology, and the Hearst Museum of Anthropology of UC Berkeley. Today, I am speaking from the campus of the University of California, Berkeley. And I recognize that Berkeley sits on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the historic and sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. I recognize that the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land. Today, we are honored to welcome Mr. Koichi Kaizawa, an elder and an Ainu elder and the executive director of National Trust Chikolonai. He's also a member of the Permanent Indigenous Peoples Committee of the Forest Stewardship Council Asia Pacific region, and the president of Biratori Ainu Culture Preservation and Revitalization Association. As an Ainu farmer and landowner in Nibutani, he was one of the two plaintiffs of the Nibutani Dam lawsuit, which was initially started by Shigeru Kayano and Tadashi Kaizawa, his father, and Koichi-san took over the lawsuit. The protest started in the mid-1980s. The dam construction started in 1986. The lawsuit started in 1993 to protest adverse impacts on the Ainu people, culture, and lifeways. And the dam construction was completed in 1996. The 1997 court decision acknowledged the Ainu people's rights, but unfortunately, there's no decommissioning of the dam itself. That said, for the first time, the Ainu people are officially acknowledged by the court, not only as minorities, but also as the indigenous people in Hokkaido. In 1997, Act on the Promotion of the Ainu Culture and Dissemination and Enlightenment of Knowledge about Ainu Tradition replaced the late 19th century extremely discriminatory act, Hokkaido Former Aborigines Protection Act. The Nibutani Dam lawsuit had strong support from environmental and civil movements in Japan, and Mr. Kaizawa and his successors maintain international relations and collaborative approaches with various stakeholders. It took over 10 years before the Japanese Diet issues a resolution stating that the government shall recognize that the Ainu are indigenous people who have their own language, religion, and culture in 2008. And it took additional 10 years in 2019 when the new Ainu Policy Promotion Act, or the new Ainu law, recognized the Ainu as an indigenous people in Japan. Mr. Kaizawa's effort to protest against the Nibutani Dam construction led him to focus on the importance of the connections between forests, rivers, and the ocean. And in 2001, he and his collaborators established non-profit organization National Trust Chikoronai, and he was the president of Chikoronai until 2019. Currently, he is the executive advisor of Chikoronai, and his son, Taichi-san, is the president. I'm also delighted to have Professor Annelise Llewellyn of Victoria University as a discussant today. Professor Llewellyn's research focuses on critical Indigenous studies, energy policy, gender studies, intersectionality, and environmental justice in the context of contemporary Japan and India. Her 2016 book, The Fabric of Indigeneity, Identity, Gender, and Settler Colonialism in Japan, analyzed Indigenous Ainu women's use of cultural production as an idiom of resistance against ongoing Japanese settler colonialism and for transgenerational cultural revival initiatives across the Ainu community. The Japanese translation of her 2016 book will come out sometime in fall of 2022. And she specifically said that she wants Ainu people, the Ainu Minzoku, to get access to the book. The Japanese title is Nuno ga orinasu senju minzokusei, and this will be published by Seidosha in Tokyo. Mr. Koichi Kaizawa will first give his lecture for about 30 minutes, and Ms. Beth Carey will interpret the talk. Professor Llewellyn then will give her comments before we move on to the Q&A session. You can submit questions at any point during the talk using the Q&A function. We have almost 100 people on this webinar today, so please use the Q&A section, not the chat section. So please welcome Mr. Kaizawa. 貝沢光一さん、よろしくお願いいたします。
いらんからくて、これは今一般的に使われているアイヌ語の挨拶とされてますけれど、本当は、こんな長い挨拶じゃないんですよね、本来は。英語で、はい何々って言いますよね。アイヌ語では、へい何々というのが一般的な挨拶で、まあ、親しい人の間で行われている挨拶でしたから、イランカラプテは、茅野さんは、あなたの心にそっと触れさせていただきますと訳してるけれど、それが本当かどうかは私にはわからないけれど、今、一般的には、アイヌ語の中では、こういうふうに使われてますけど、昔のお年寄りは、親しい人に会うと、へい、何々という後に名前をつけて挨拶してました。ですから、ちょっと時代がともに挨拶は変わっているように思います。
We now often say Iran karapte to say hello to somebody in Ainu language, but we usually, for more familiar people, we say hey so and so rather than the whole Iran karapte, and that is something that we seem to have come to recently as the usage of Ainu language has changed. The Iran karapte means, for example, Iran karapte, Mr. Kayano means Mr. Kayano is touching your heart, or I am touching your heart. So it's a kind of a long-winded way of saying it. So for more familiar cases, we can say, hey, so-and-so, and the person's name. You can see even in that small example how the usage of Ainu language is changing.
はい、じゃあ次に行きますか。
Okay, should we go to the next slide? Start the slides.
これはまあ日本、皆さん知ってると思いますが、日本がどこにあるかということで、はい、次に。
So this just tells us where Japan is in the world.
私たちの住んでいるニブタニというところは、日本の北北海道の中央より南の、位置する猿川の、20キロほど上流に私たちの村があります。
So Nibutani, which is part of Biratori Town, is in the south central portion of Hokkaido, the northern island of Japan, and it's located about 20 kilometers up the Saru River.
はい、次お願いします。これは、一応私が今何やってるかということなんですけれど、一つは、NPO 法人森林を守るチコロナへの相談役、あるいはビラトリアイヌ文化保存会の会長、あとは FSC、これは森林管理の団体で、本部がドイツにあるそこのアジア地区の常設委員をやっております。
So as a way to introduce myself, I am a farmer in the town of Nibutani and in Biratori, and I'm now senior advisor to the NPO National Trust Chikornoi, and I'm also president of the Biratori Ainu Culture Preservation Association. I am a member of the Forest Stewardship Council, Permanent Indigenous Peoples Committee. The Forest Stewardship Council is an international organization headquartered in Germany, and I'm part of the Asian section of that organization.
はい、次お願いします。私の生まれ育ったところ、これはニブタニです。ビラトリ町の人口が約5000人、そのうちのアイヌ民族はだいたい1000人ぐらいと予想されます。で、私の生まれ育ったニブタニ地区の世帯はだいたい140戸ぐらい、人口450ぐらい、そのうち、アイヌ民族はだいたい300人ぐらいかなと思います。正式に調べてないので正確とは言えませんが、ただ、これはアメリカやカナダのように居留区なんと作らないんで、要するにアイヌがいい場所に住んでたのために、そこへ、移住してきた、日本人が入り込んできたという混住状態です。
So I was born and raised in Nibutani in Biratori Town. Biratori Town has a population of 5,000, and of those, Ainu peoples are about 1,000. And in Nibutani, which is the smaller section of Biratori, has about 140 households, which is a total of about 450 population. And of those, about 300 are Ainu. And this is the Ainu first were living here, which is a very comfortable, nice place to live. And the Japanese people came to live within the area. So it's a mixed population of Japanese and Ainu peoples.
はい、次お願いします。この私たちのニブタニに、1997年ニブタニ、ダムが建設されました。この、ダムに、反対した、私と、茅野茂さん。要するに茅野茂さんは、鮭ぐらい、サーモンですね、鮭ぐらい自由に取らせようと。で、私はアイヌ民族を先住民族として認めようという、 訴えを起こしました。で、その、結果、1997年に判決が下され、その判決はアイヌ民族の文化共有権を無視したから違法であるという、ニブタニダムは違法であるという判決、また歴史的に明らかにアイヌ民族は先住民族であるという判決を下しました。
So with the construction of the Nibutani Dam on the Saru River, we had a difficult situation, and two of us, Mr. Shigeru Kayano, whose main slogan was to at least let the Ainu people fish salmon as they used to fish salmon. And my position of recognizing the Ainu as indigenous peoples. The two of us formed a group to submit a lawsuit against the Nibutani Dam. And in 1997, at the trial, the decision was that the dam was actually an illegal construction. And the reason is that it disregarded the Ainu people's right to enjoy their traditional culture. And this decision also recognized the history of Ainu as an indigenous people.
はい、次お願いします。これは1997年に、札幌地方裁判所で下された判決文の一部です。で、赤線で囲まれた重要な部分なんですけれど、アイヌ民族は歴史的に日本の先住民族であると。アイヌ民族の、文化などを、考慮せず、ダムを無視し、ニブタニダムを建設し、民族の暮らし、文化を奪ったものだということで、ニブタニダムは違法であるという判決が下されました。
This is one section of the decision made by the Sapporo District Court in 1997. And the part in red is the paragraph that marks that the dam is illegal. It confirms that the Ainu people are historically an indigenous people of Japan, and by failing to consider the needs and wishes of the Ainu people, the construction of the dam has robbed the Ainu in Nibutani their lifeway and their culture.
はい、次お願いします。で、これは今も続けられている、畜産家を行う前の神への祈りの様子です。ですから、この手前の人が茅野茂さん、隣が私の父、貝沢正です。
So this is a ceremony to launch a new wooden boat, the Chipsanke, and they're performing prayers to gods, and this kind of activity still goes on. The people in the photograph, the one furthest forward on the right side is Mr. Shigeru Kayano, and the one next to him is my father, Tadashi Kaizawa.
はい、次お願いします。これは、ニコ楽しそうに、丸木舟に乗っているのは私の父、正です。
So the man with a big smile, happily rowing the hollow log boat is my father. This is part of the Chipsanke ceremony, and that's Tadashi Kaizawa, my father.
はい、次お願いします。これは、ダムに水をためて、4ヶ月経った4ヶ月後、ちょうどこの時茅野茂さんが国会議員だったために、建設省と、話し合いをして、一時ダムの水を抜きました。で、満水になっているダムの水を抜くのに1週間もかからなかったんですね。で、驚いたことには、たった4ヶ月なのに水がなくなると、村中に悪臭が立ち込めました。それはこの画面で見て分かるように足元黒いですね。 厚いところで30センチ、薄いところで10センチ以上のヘドロが溜まってました。そのヘドロが悪臭を放っていたんです。
So this is a photograph of the Nibutani Lake Dam. 4 months after the lake was flooded, the Shigeru Kayano, who was a member of parliament, negotiated with the construction ministry to release water from the dam to be able to perform the Chipsanke ceremony. And it didn't take a week for the water to be released. And after the water was released, we saw that what was on the base of the lake was a black dirt sediment. And that really accumulated into 10 to 30 centimeters and released a very foul smell which permeated the village.
はい、次お願いします。これは、2003年の集中豪雨の時、このダムに上流から流れてきた、流木等が堆積している様子です。厚いところで2メートルほど、この上人間が歩いても全然沈まないような量の流木が、溜まっていました。
Due to a typhoon in August of 2003 and the very torrential rains from that typhoon, many logs from upstream came down toward the dam. And in places, there were 2 meters of logs that were piled up. If you walked on top of the logs, there would be no problem. You'd be able to walk right across.
はい、次お願いします。これは、もうすでに建設し完成してしまった、ビラトリダムの、建設予定地の図面です。つまりここには、血の見知りが1、2、3、3つあります。
Now we're moving to the Biratori Dam construction, and this is the planning stage drawing that of the Biratori Dam. It has already been built, but we can see that there are 3 places that are sacred prayer giving places for the Ainu people called Chinomishir.
このビラトリダムの建設は一時政権が交代したとき、中止の話も出ましたが、今の自民党政権になって、まだこの建設が再開され、今年3月までに完成します。
So when there was a government change in the ruling party, there was a talk that it might at one point that we might have the dam plan be rescinded. But when the LDP gained power again, the dam construction project went ahead, and it is due to be completely finished by March this year.
ここで一番ニブタニダムの裁判でも問題になった血の見知り、要するにアイヌの人々が崇め奉る要するに神々がそこで会議を開いたり休む場所と言われている血の見知り、これが3カ所もあるということです。
So the main issue here is similar to what we asserted in the Nibutani Dam case, but there are 3 places, Chinomishiri, that where the gods rest or have their meetings that are located in the region of the dam.
はい、次お願いします。上流から行くと、これは、匂いの血の見知りと言われている。この、お年寄りに話を聞いたときに、この麓の河原には約1ヘクタールほどの畑があって、毎日のように通って畑を耕したと言われています。
So there are 3 sections And one of these has about 1 hectare of land where people go and actually farm the lands.
はい、次お願いします。これは、その血の見知りの中でも一番位の高い越南家の血の見知り。これが、この血の見知りも、ダムの影響を受けます。はい、次お願いします。
So this Echinanke is the highest ranked prayer and God residing place in this area. And that would also be affected by the dam.
はい、次お願いします。これが、ダムを作るための調査中の、血の見知り、要するにシケレペコタンの血の見知りです。調査のためにこのように足場が組まれたりなんかしています。
So in
は
order to do the assessment and the surveys for the dam, you can see that there are various parts that are they are working on this area, and this is the Shikeperikotang area, yet another sacred place that will be destroyed by the dam construction.
い、次お願いします。これが秋のようなそのシケレペコタンの血の見知りですけれど、これが、破壊されることになりました。次お願いします。
So this also is an area that will be destroyed. It's a fall scene.
これは、その血の見知りと言われているところへ、本当は血の見知りというのは人間が立ち入ってはいけないことになってるんですけれど、ダム建設のためにこのように安全のために手すりが作られたり、人間が上がったりしている。そこへ私たちは調査のために登って写真を撮りました。これは2016年の1月1日ですね。はい、次お願いします。
So, すみません、ちょっと残しておきましょう。So this is another photograph from January 1st of 2016 when we went to investigate what was going on in terms of the dam construction. And you can see that this Chinomishiri area is supposed to be a very sacred place where humans are not allowed to enter. But in this case, there are these handrails that have been put up, and we went there to take photos as in part of our investigation. どうぞ。
はい、次お願いします。このように血の見知りというのは、要するに、下の人々の姿、生活を見れる場所が血の見知りとなっています。つまり、一つの村の、周り3カ所に血の見知りがあって、その三方から村を見て守るというアイヌの考え方です。
The Chinomishiri are located above where people live so that the gods can look down and protect people. There are usually like 3 places from which the gods look down to oversee how humans are acting and protect them.
はい、次お願いします。これは、21年ですから、もう去年ですね、8月に、撮影したものです。血の見知り、見事に壊されています。先ほどの写真はこの上から撮ってるんですけれど、見事に壊されている状態です。
This was last August when the dam construction has progressed quite a bit. And you can see that the Chinomishiri that we had looked at in earlier photographs has been completely destroyed to be part of the dam.
はい、次お願いします。これは要するに、今、建設省が行っている要するに血の見知りを、3D で撮影し復元するということで発泡スチロールで復元している工事の様子です。果たしてそれが復元できるかは疑問に思います。
So this is taken in October where the construction is going to have a 3D effect, a reconstruction in styrofoam of the Chinorimishiri to indicate that that was a sacred place. But I sort of doubt if that will really be sufficient for us.
おそらく、今月いっぱいが後期なんで、3月末には、この形が現れると思いますけど、本当の最初の姿に戻るかどうかはものすごい疑問視です。
So by the end of this month, it should be the term for the construction should be over, they should have reconstructed it as they say, but I doubt if it will look as it did before.
はい、次お願いします。これは、今年の1月ですね、すでにダムが完成し、試験淡水が始まった様子を映しております。
So the dam has already been constructed by January of 2022, and this is a test filling of the dam.
次お願いします。その試験淡水によって川岸にある木々や草が、このように見事に水没しています。試験淡水が終わると、この水が、ある程度抜かれると思いますけれど、この木々や草が果たして生き残るかどうか疑問です。
You can see that the trees and grasses have been flooded with this test trial filling of the dam. And some of the water may be released, but I wonder if the trees and the grasses will survive.
このように、先ほども話したように、一時は中止となったビラトリダム、3月いっぱいで完成の予定です。ですから、ニブタニダムの判決がどこにも生かされてないと。何のために、ニブタニダム裁判をやったのかなと、今疑問に思っています。
So this dam, this Biratori Dam, which was once paused in terms of construction, will now be completed by the end of March. And my fear is that the Nibutani Dam decision of 1997 has not been effective at all in future dam constructions like this Biratori Dam. And I sometimes wonder what was our action for the Nibutani Dam and what without much result.
はい、次お願いします。一つ戻ってくださいますか。いいんです。はい、次お願いします。そういう意味で、私は、もともと森が健全であれば、ダムなどいらないと。森が健全であれば空気も水も、おいしいものができるはずと。そういう意味で、最初からダム建設には反対でした。
So now we're focusing on the Chikonoi forest area. My thought is that as long as the forest is healthy, then we will have good air and good water. So there was no need for any kind of dam. And that has been my belief.
でそういう意味で1994年から、森を守る運動を始めています。で、そういう中で今では、これ手に入れた土地すべて、全国の人々のカンパや寄付によって手に入れた土地でだいたい30ヘクタール以上の山林を所有しています。
Since 1994, we have been working hard to preserve the forest. And from donations of funds from around Japan, we've been able to buy up forests that are about 30 hectares.
これがニブタニダムですから、 ここからはニブタニダムも見ることができると思います。我が家はこの辺にあります。
So I think on the left edge, you can see the Nibutani Dam. So this is just where we live in this area.
はい、次お願いします。まあ、私たちの目指している森はこんな森です。で、これはまだ40年ぐらいしか経ってませんけど、もともと北海道には直径2メートル、3メートルの大木がありました。それが日本の侵略によって今は山にほとんどありません。ですから、できればそういう森を取り戻したい。そしてその中でアイヌ文化を学べる、自然の美しさを学べる場所を作りたいというのがチコロ内の最大の目的です。
So our effort is to revitalize the local forest in the Chikonai National Trust, and we've been working on this since 1994. This picture shows a forest that's maybe about 40 years old. In the olden days, there used to be trees with diameters of 2 meters or 3 meters in Hokkaido. But with the intrusion of the Japanese, there not many forests, primeval forests like that are left. So we are trying to revitalize the forest to make it a place where we can engage in Ainu cultural activities.
はい、次お願いします。これは、私たちの猿川の源流、幌尻岳です。この山はアイヌにとって聖なる山として、そこからおいしい水、空気がいただけると言って、ことあるごとにアイヌの人々はここの山に向かってお祈りをしていた場所です。
This is Mount Poroshiri, which is the place of origin for the Saru River. And as you can see, there is delicious water and beautiful, very clear air that is available due to this mountain and the natural environment there. So it is an area where Ainu have been praying to thank the mountain, but also in an area where we really would like to preserve to have our clean air.
はい、次お願いします。これは、血の見知りの一つで、これ今でもハンターの人たちは漁が始まる前に、そして漁が終わると、安全祈願、見守ってくれてありがとうというお祈りをしている、一つの血の見知りです。
This is a chinomishiri, particularly that hunters pray to before and after they have a hunt. And they pray for their safety during the hunt.
通称、私たちは象のケツと象のお尻に似ているので、象のケツと言っています。
We call this the elephant's rear end because it looks a little bit like one.
これあまりにも急で三方からは登れないんですね。で、抜き別だけというところから伝ってはここへ来れるんですけど、この三方からは登ることができない急な山です。
The slope is so steep that from 3 directions you cannot climb this mountain. Only from the Yukibetsu area can you climb the mountain.
はい、次お願いします。これは、私は3年ほど前まではビラトリダム建設に関するアイヌ文化に与える影響の調査をやっていて、その中で生き合ったクマさんです。道路で遊んでて、パッと横へ逃げたんで、いなくなったかなと思って、逃げた付近で止まってみると、 このように私たちを眺めていました。非常に可愛いんで、使わせていただいています。熊は、みんな恐ろしいと思ってると思うけど、彼らにとって一番嫌いなのは人間です。ですから人間の気配を感じると彼らは身を隠してしまいます。
So for 3 years, I have been working on the damage to the Ainu culture that the Biratori Dam would engender. And for the various investigations for that, I go into the forests and look around, and I saw a bear on the road. And then when he saw me, he ran off away, and I thought I had lost sight of him completely, but then I saw him in the woods looking toward me. So I took this picture, and I'm using it to show that we are living in nature with wild animals as well. Bears, we're always frightened. Humans are always frightened of bears, but the bears are dislike humans very much. So whenever they see humans, they run away.
はい、以上で、スライドは終わらせていただきます。やいらいけれ、サンキュー。
So that ends my slide presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, 貝澤さん。小石さん、どうもありがとうございました。
いえいえ。わかりましたか？
はい。私は2016年から何度かニブタニにお邪魔させていただいていて、ビラトリダムの建設予定地もご案内していただいたんですけれども、現在の状況を見て、もうこんなにできてしまっているのかと思うと、本当に胸が潰れる思いです。Well, if you can translate, I can take a breath. So.
Okay, so I've been visiting Biratori Town area for several times since 2016. And I met with you and others in Nibutani, and I was guided to the Biratori Dam construction site. And now that I see that the construction has pretty much ended, it is very heartbreaking to see what has happened.
Thank you, Beth. So we would like to move on to the comments from Annalise Rollen. And I'd like to say we are trying to do our best to do things in a triangular manner, but in reality, I think Japanese and English are the main languages for today, given that our honored speaker is speaking primarily in Japanese. I've asked Annalise to give her comments both in Japanese and English. It takes longer than usual, but please be patient and use the time, extra time to think about your questions. Annalise, please.
皆さん、こんにちは。今日、国際女性の日を祝ったところで、アイヌ民族にとってとっても大切なチリ・ユキエさんの、アイヌ信用集からの、アイヌ信用集の上からちょっとお借りしたいと思います。チリさんはこのように書きました。その昔、この広い北海道は私たち先祖の自由な天地でありました。天真爛漫な稚語のように美しい大自然に包囲されてのんびりを楽しく生活していた彼らは、真に、自然の長寿、なんという幸福な人たちであったですよ。チリさんがアイヌ信用集を文字起こし、また日本語訳を作ったことが、文学世界での、偉業として尊敬されて、とても有名ですけれども、けれども、チリさんまたは貝澤さんから学べるのは、アイヌの文学だけではなくて、アイヌの先住民族の知識を科学 科学、としても捉えるべきと思います。English. Today, in honor of International Women's Day, I want to start with the words of Chiri Yukie-san in her foreword to the Ainu Shinyoshu, or the collection of Ainu chants of Kamui. Chiri Yukie-san was a brilliant translator of Ainu Yukara, and she was the first person to transliterate Ainu from the oral form to the written form, and then translate this to Japanese. You may have heard her famous poem, Shirokanipe Ranran Pishkan. In the past, and this is from the foreword to Ainu Shinyoshu, chants, collection of Ainu chants of Kamui. In the past, this vast Hokkaido was our ancestors' world of freedom, living with ease and pleasure in the manner of innocent babes in the embrace of vast, beautiful nature. They were truly the beloved children of nature. Oh, what happy people they must have been. So today I'd like to situate Chiri-san's words in a different way. Her incredible work to translate the Ainu Shinyoshu, the Ainu chants of the Kamui, is celebrated as a literary feat. But today I'd like to consider how Chiri-san's lessons teach us about Ainu indigenous knowledge as science, a very different perspective. Chiri-sanのアイヌ神謡集は、では、キツネ、カエル、そしてムール貝、ピパウシかしら、また、シマフクロウにも出会います。それぞれの生き物はカムイ、あるいは人間以上の生き物、more than humans です。この世界の先住民族のロジック、チリさんの言う自由の天地。この空間は現在の近現代日本とは別です。チコロ内における貝沢西パが、森を育んでいる場所もそうです。これは空間的に違います。先住民族の科学は、パラレルに存在します。カムイの生きる時間、空間、土地への管理、土地への主権を握っているカムイです。セトラの植民地、セトラコロニアリズムの日本社会とは別の空間です。それから当然ですが、この空間の科学も異なります。English. In Chiri-san's Ainu Shinyoshu, chants of Ainu spiritual beings, we meet foxes, frogs, and even freshwater mussels. And of course, the fish owl, the very famous fish owl. All of these beings are Ainu Kamui, or more than humans. The indigenous logic of this world, which operates in a different temporal scale, Jiuna Tenchi, the land of Chiri-san's ancestors, is the world in which Kaizawa Nishpa nurtures a growing forest at Chikoronai. These worlds of indigenous science exist in parallel. They are the temporal space of Kamui, Kamui as sovereign beings. 私が初めて貝沢さんにお会いしたのは2002年か2003年だと思いますが、ゴールデンウィークのことだったと思います。チコロナイ森の食事合宿でした。めちゃめちゃ働かされました。いや、ジョークです。楽しかったです。貝沢さんとチコロナイに教わったのは、もうたくさんのことありまして、森、土、薬草に対する、違った考え方です。貝沢さんの森との関係は、征服にまつわる近代国家支配、いわゆるセトラ植民地のモデルではなく、森は干ばつするべきじゃない。貝沢さんは違うビジョンを、抱いています。貝沢さんとチコロナイの目指す、ものは、おひょうの森。その他の森林をニブタニの裸干ばつされた山になったところに育つ努力をたくさんしていますってさっきおっしゃったように。それはセトラ空間と全く別の、論理に根付いています。北海道開拓局、北海道開発局、またその前に北海道開拓士が北海道の森の生態系モダニティを完全に植え付けようとしていました。が、 2003年の台風の際に、70年の、瓦礫、ヘドロが、70年の瓦礫と流木が、流されてきて、ダムの、貯水口が大変に詰まってしまいました。さっきスライドで見せてくださったように。ですから、私たちはもうそろそろ別の科学モデルにまた耳を傾けるのではないかと。I first met Kaizawa-san in 2002-2003 when I traveled to Nibutani to learn about the Chikoronai project and to see the baby forest. In contrast to a model of clearing the forest of Hokkaido, which is the settler modernity idea, which is often based in conquest or making the nature sort of work for you to serve society, Kaizawa-san has a very different vision. Kaizawa-san and Chikoronai's work to grow a forest of ohyo trees and other trees in the naked clear-cut forests of Nibutani are rooted in a different relation with space. Hokkaido Development Bureau, and before it, the Hokkaido colonial authorities, struggled mightily to control Hokkaido's forest with an ecological modernity. But after 2003 and the typhoon that showered down 70 years of debris, clogging the dam's reservoir, we might ask ourselves about other alternative models of science. この時間感覚とは、直接的な進歩に束縛されていない。この科学の別のモデルとは、先住民族の人間じゃない、存在、あるいは、人間じゃない存在、カムイとの関係が中心になります。日本政府が決めた、アイヌ民族の新たな法律、2019年の新たな法律は、本当の先住民族権利を認めていないと批判されています。ですので、今でもチコロナイや貝沢さんたちがやっている活動は、権利がなくとも先住民族の価値観とビジョンとこのオルタナティブの科学を、実現しようとしています。チコロナイまたは貝沢さん、ヤウンモシリにいる人たちが、実はすでに時間的な主権、アイヌとして全く違う関係、自然、いわゆる、人間じゃない世界との関係を行使しようとしています。それは TEK、伝統的な生態系の知識、略して TEK、Traditional Ecological Knowledge。TEK とは、人間と非人間の関係と、やりとりを導く様々な祖先との決まり方針です。アイヌ語で言えば、カムイとアイヌ。アイヌはつまり人間ですね。自然とはじゃなくて、存在するような立場ではないですね。アイヌ民族の世界観の中で。カムイの世界と人間の世界、それぞれがあって、それぞれがパラレルに存在しています。英語ですが、and through, sorry. Okay. Through this model of time, which is not restricted to the idea of linear progress, Indigenous relations with the more than human world are centered. And some have been very critical of the new Ainu law of 2019 for not recognizing or not instating a system of Ainu indigenous rights. But we might also consider how Kaizawa-san, Chikoronai, and others in what is today known as Hokkaido, but for the Ainu is Yaun Moshiri, how they already exercise indigenous sovereignty through the practice of TEK. Traditional ecological knowledge, which refers to the set of ancestral relations which guide interactions between humans and the natural, quote unquote, or humans and the non-human world. In Ainu language, we might call this Kamui and Ainu, instead of labeling nature as something separate from humans, which is kind of a foreign, it's a very Cartesian-based kind of model. So to wrap up, 貝沢さんとチコロナイから学んだのは山ほどです。例えば、赤ん坊の木々は、とっても弱くて、赤ちゃんの木ね、非常にケアが必要です。例えば、すぐに、鹿さんに、ユクたちね、にやられちゃいます。あるいは、キトピロや、プクサキナなど山菜を森林からいただくときは、とにかく根っこを取らない。将来のキトピロが入るように、必ずその根っこを残しておきます。大事に、残しておきます。森に入る際は、必ずお供え物を捧げること。例えば、麹、タバコの葉っぱ、穀物を少し森と森のカムイたちに、分けていきます。それに、猿川流域に昔、津波が襲ってきた歴史がありまして、これは何でしてるかと言いますと、土地の地名に残っています。猿川流域にニナという地域があって、そのニナというのは、日本語でヒラメという意味ですが、そのニナは、これは貝沢美代子さんから学んだんですが、ヒラメは普通は海に住んでいて、ニナという地名から学べるのは、津波の時にヒラメがここまで、波で運ばれて流されてしまいました。このように、アイヌ語と空間に、先住民族の主権の新たな関係と、特別なその関係の持ち方が、理解できると思います。土地に、刻み込まれています。From Kaizawa-san, I learned that baby trees are vulnerable, and when we gather wild garlic, for example, kitopiro in Ainu or yojaniniku in Japanese, or puksakina, another very important plant for the Ainu people, when we gather these from the forest, we must be careful not to destroy the roots. We must always be humble when we enter forests with gifts of rice, koji, which is like so koji, small tobacco leaves, or gifts of grains, always leaving grains when we enter the forest. We must express our gratitude when we exit. I also learned from Kaizawa-san and his family that Ainu language has a long memory of historical happenings and disasters in the landscape. For example, flounder. So there is one small hamlet in Nibutani that is known as Nina, or hirame in Japanese. And this is thought to be because of a tsunami that came many years before. And it was so powerful that the waves carried a flounder, a Nina, into the tree. So now that place is called Nina. That region of Nibutani is named Nina. So this teaches us about temporal sovereignty and a very different system, an alternative science and a different way of relating to the land. So last point I wanted to make, from Kaizawa-san's talk, I hope we might be reminded that Kamui are sentient beings who speak back, and that understanding these relations from a different starting place is itself a native science with its own logic for indigenous futurity, which is a model from which we can all learn. And Beth-san has kindly translated. So Kamui wa ishiki no aru mono de話し返すものです。違う出発点からこの関係を理解できます。先住民族科学には独自の、理論があり、先人の、未来性があります。それから私たちは学ぶことが、できると思います。はい。やいらいきれ、そんのピリカやいらいきれ。
Thank you, Danelis. Danelis さん、ありがとうございました。I think what she talked about, the importance of the Chikolonai, protecting the forest and reviving the indigenous forest in relation to TK, that I think is really central to one of the discussions. But I think what we learned from his talk is so covering a lot of issues that are directly related to indigenous rights, land rights, and fishing rights, and the importance of cultural landscapes. When I first visited Koichi-san back in 2016, I was told that I should read the contents of this CD and come back. 小石さんを最初にお尋ねしたとき2016年だと思うんですが、まずこの CD の中身を読んでからもう一遍勉強して戻ってらっしゃいと言われました。When I downloaded it, I found that it's actually reports of environmental assessments since 2003. And when I printed out, it was like each volume was like this. And I have to confess, I haven't had the chance to read everything thoroughly, but I was amazed how much information it contains. いただいた CD をプリントアウトしたときに、その分量にまず圧倒されて全部をきちんと読めたわけではないんですが、環境保全対策調査の成果として語られているものが、植生とか もちろんのことですけれども、文化的なノレッジ、知識についてもいろいろな聞き取りの成果とかも書かれていて、それだけでもすごい成果だと思います。But I also have to say that the whole environmental assessment was done because of the dam construction was planned, and you need to remember that, okay, having the knowledge on paper, is that good enough? And obviously from what we saw today, that is not good enough. 調査報告書というのはとても大事だと思いますけれども、同時にそういった調査がなされなくてはならなかったということは、ダムの建設ということが前提にあるわけで、そういう意味でいくら記録に残しても残せない価値というものがある。今日のお話を聞いて、そういうことをさらに強く思いました。So I think today's Kaizawa-san's talk really made us think of what we could potentially do, and also to learn about what's happening on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, that we do have less opportunities to learn about the Ainu people's situation and its history. And I think today's talk really gave us a lot of information and also made us think. Annelise, would you like to say a few words before we end?
I just wanted to say very briefly that I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to hear the words of Kaizawa Koichi-san directly. Because of COVID, it's very hard to travel to Hokkaido, and thanks to this opportunity to learn from him. I think he's helped us understand the real, not just kind of the words or the sort of facts we can learn from reading about the dam, the history of the Nibutani Dam and the Biratori Dam in the textbooks and in the history books, but he's lived this experience. He's walked this pathway of trying to resolve this, tension for for decades now. And it's so powerful to be able to hear his own direct words. And also it's quite painful for me, I didn't mention in my comments, but just seeing the actual structures of Biratori Dam, right there bolted into the sides of Chinomishiri, there in Biratori in the upper Sarugawa. It's quite painful, actually, because I've been there many times with him where we could just drive around the area, but I think that road is now gone. So I just want to say I'm so grateful we can hear his perspective, and also that he reminds us that it's the long process. It's not, the trees are not going to be a forest tomorrow. We have to continue tending them and listening to them, and remembering that we have to make a place for the plants to grow, because without the forest, the salmon won't be healthy, nor will any of the other sentient beings, more than humans, that live there. So really thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you very much, Annelise. I hope that we can meet many of you again. Thank you. Yay like it.
Yay like it.
Thank you. See you no karando.
See you no karando.